Hello and thank you for being here. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, Aaron William Freeland.
Hey, Frank.
Hey, Aaron. How you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
Well, good.
Excellent.
Head.
You know, it happens to the best of us. That's why I keep mine short, though.
Mine's short, but not short enough, apparently. All right. We're gonna talk about something that's really important right now, and that is the Canadian government and by some people's estimation, the person most prepared and or with the most support to succeed Prime Minister Trudeau, Krista Freeland, has left the cabinet and included a parting shot.
Yeah, it was a rather interesting morning for sure. You know, having all sorts of different confirmations flying around and people being elevated to different positions in relatively short order to cover the shortfall. Leblanc has been sworn in as as the finance minister after Christie resigns. That's public safety minister Dominic Leblanc. Um, Freeland said that she had to step down from her position because the prime minister had apparently lost faith in her and wanted to assign her a new role, specifically dealing with Trump and the upcoming transition of power in the United States. Um, in her resignation letter, Freeland said that she and Trudeau had felt themselves at odds for weeks about the best path forward for Canada, including how to treat the 25% tariff threat from the states. And This, of course, has led to the usual barking seals to speak up about, oh, it's time for an election. Everybody's corrupt. They have to go. Trust my three-word slogans. Um, it's certainly a time of turmoil, and it's something that's going to give me fodder for weeks to come, if not more. There are rumors on the horizon, of course, that there will be other individuals who will be leaving caucus as well. Further weakening Trudeau's position. We'll have to see how all of that falls out.
With the history that has I guess you could say been an earmark of the Trudeau leadership the past few years, there's been a lot of hue and cry about him and how horrible a leader he is. And there was a little bit of an echo in that from Freeland's departure. Now, I think, first of all, what do you think is the reason why she said, that basically she disagrees with the thinking process that the prime minister has at this point?
She did mention in her letter of resignation that there was a lot of political trickery and basically behind the scenes shenanigans that were going on that she wasn't in favor of as a politician. Um, it put the Liberals' position in further crisis. And it's one of those things where um, perhaps his leadership style wasn't best suited for what they were attempting to do. Uh, you know, there are certain political songs that can played over and over and over again. You know, the fact that the deficit was $61 billion instead of 40 something is certainly something that played into that potential decision as well. Um, but again, this is one of those things where we're looking at either prorogation or resignation of the prime minister, which would kickstart an election. So, you know,
I don't know. I'm not in Krista Freeland's brain, um, or in any of her major consultants' brains. But the assumption for me is the Trudeau name right now, for election purposes at this time, is not in a good place. I think we can all admit that. There's many reasons why the prime minister is in trouble. I think the largest thing would be how long he's been in power. The nice thing about being a politician is that you don't make more friends the longer you're the leader of the country. You do have to make decisions, whether people like them or not. They become tied to you. Um, Everything that goes wrong in the country while you're in power becomes tied to you. And in his special case, because of the environment we have today, there are a lot of people who speak out in a very derogatory term, downright um, personally attacking. Um, I don't know that personal attacks can be justified. I can understand the frustration with some people, but his name now is associated with future failure by the Liberal Party. I don't. It doesn't matter to me how you cut it. His divorce with his wife, while it shouldn't have an impact on on people and how they vote, but it speaks to, you don't know, you can assume it speaks to character as people want to assume it. Um, it's an opportunity for people to assume uh, a negative in his personality, right? He has a lot of things working against him, and I think I don't know if this is Freeland sincerely disconnecting herself from the prime minister for the purposes of saying, well, he didn't want her there anymore, and she's saying, well, I don't, you can't fire me, I quit.
Yeah, it does. It does seem like that, doesn't it? One of those, fine, I'm taking my ball and going home before you can
Yeah.
tell me to get off your property, sort of thing.
And I think also, and I hate to be a conspiracy person, but this isn't a conspiracy I'm talking about. This is an assumption on my part. What I'll call, in my education, my educated feeling is this: do you know she could produce something like that, and they could have a conversation, and he could have approved what she said. As a leader of a party, if you're going to put yourself behind the party, put the party first, there has to be a disconnection for the future person that plans on running as the leader of the Liberal Party. Everything that's bad that exists today, part of what I reviewed earlier, all of it doesn't necessarily belong to Trudeau. But at this point and at this juncture, at a point when it seems like the Liberal Party is going not to have a leader, either he's deciding to, or it's been decided for him, if you will.
Mhm.
The next one that comes out needs to remove the shackles of the previous leader. We learned in the election in the United States that's very difficult, and I don't see it being any less difficult here in Canada.
The other thing that we're looking at here is Trudeau has been in power since 2015. And for most Canadian prime ministers, um, 2 terms, 10 years, seems to be their expiry date. Regardless of how popular that leader was or how much they accomplished during their time in office or what obstacles they've steered the people through. Generally, after about a decade, people decide, well, we've had enough of this guy. Let's get somebody else in. The problem is, I'm not sure if any of the alternatives are really any better.
Well, I do think though you're circling a very good point, and that is it's my turn.
Yeah, you guys have had the reins long enough.
It's
It's
my
now
turn.
time for us to step in, and we're gonna build the homes and
Well,
and
and
stop the
that's,
crime. And
but I'm talking about even within the Liberal Party, it's
oh,
my
for sure,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Like they say that a human body regenerates itself completely every 7 years. It seems to be the same when it comes to political bodies. That they seem to renew themselves every 2 terms or so.
so
Some
what is it? I'm sorry. Sorry,
I was
Aaron.
I was just to say some don't quite get off the ground, like Tom Mulcair. Others, like Maxime Bernier, seem like outright failures. It's one of those things that, the body politic needs to renew itself every once in a while, and it seems like they've come to their limit.
And there always has to be, within the Liberal Party, a Quebec connection. There has
Oh,
to be.
100%.
There has to be a Quebec connection, and it has to be a solid one, which means that there has to be somebody who fits that profile that can go outside the country and garner votes. There used to be a time when the Conservatives had difficulty within the province of Quebec. That changed. Um, I guess what can we talk about for how work? Which I'm seeing two places to go here. Talk about Quebec and what it'll take for a prime minister to be elected based on Quebec, or look at the rest of the country, what it'd take for a prime minister to get elected. This will be an election era in which I think, and unfortunately, we Canadians, we tend to be a part of the echo of politics in the United States. I think what we'll have this time is we're going to have a prime minister, I think, that is pro drill, drill, drill.
I mean, it certainly does seem to be trending that way. I know that other political groups were certainly caught out by that as well. When they asked Doug Ford about it, he said, I had no idea that that was actually coming." So it's one of those, huh? I had absolutely no clue that any of this was in the offing. When they asked Leblanc about it, he had indicated that no, even when he'd been with Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago couple of weeks ago, there was no indication from Trudeau that this was happening. So this is it's certainly a maneuver that seems to have taken the party by surprise. You throw on top of that the Liberal housing minister Sean Fraser saying he's not going to seek re-election because he wants to spend more time with his family, and I think there were 3 or 4 other members of the Liberal Party that said that they were not going to be running again. So it's certainly thrown the Liberal Party for a bit of a loop. Um, I think one of the things that we need to note as well here is that the majority of the prime ministers of Canada tend to come from the east. Starting all the way back with John A. And working ourselves all the way through uh, to Justin, who comes from Quebec. The only like Diefenbaker was a prime minister from Saskatchewan. Joe Clark had a mercifully short reign, but he was from Alberta. You also had Kim Campbell from BC, who again had a very short reign. Uh, and I think the only other person I can think of that has sat at the head of power for so long was Stephen Harper from Calgary.
Originally from Ontario.
Originally from Ontario, moved to Calgary.
And the
Worked his
prime
way.
minister we have now is originally from Quebec, but went to BC,
Mhm.
right? So,
Yep.
so I'm not trying to poke holes in what you're saying. I'm just basically saying it isn't 100%, right?
No.
There's variables,
Yes.
I wonder, because you bring up an excellent point, and this is something to truly consider for all us Canadians to consider. How much impact did that conversation in Mar-a-Lago with the president designate with the prime minister? He comes back from that. And Krista Freeland, in my opinion, correct me please if I'm wrong, she was kind of the antithesis of Donald Trump. She's a fighter. She wasn't going to roll over if Donald Trump did whatever he did. She wouldn't roll over. And I think, in a sense, that's what she was saying. That was the message she was delivering. She
Mhm.
was basically saying, no more games. Now it's like I get the impression from what she said is playtime's over. Now it gets real. And she's saying, now we've gotta do. I mean, how do you deal with a US president who coming in is going to say, it's time for you to do things the way I tell you, like it or not?
Yeah, it's one of those things where they're in an uncomfortable position now when it comes to dealing with the American government, because for a lot of people in Canada, um, And for a lot of the political parties and political members in Canada, Donald Trump is the antithesis of everything Canadian. So, they're now finding themselves in an area where they have to try to be able to push back, but at the same time maintain diplomatic relations with who a person who is essentially a bully on the world stage, and that's a very, very difficult situation to be in.
I might have agreed with you 10 years ago. That doesn't to me,
Fair.
that doesn't move as clearly. It
Mhm.
doesn't resonate as clearly as I would like it to. Uh, the problem is, some of the policies that Canada believes in, even the prime minister himself, sided with Trump, if you remember, when he was gonna make the pipeline happen, right? And then Joe Biden killed it. So,
Yeah, I
there's
I mean,
there there's a history here that,
mhm.
there's some stuff. Listen, um, when you got a guy, in Donald Trump, who says a lot of crap, a lot of crap. He throws stuff against that guy's a spaghetti manufacturer and a wall probably the size of the China Wall with spaghetti that's been plastered against it, because he doesn't say things that he's going to do. He says things for effect, in the hope that it has a cause, right? In reverse, right? Because he works from the other way. Usually, life is cause and effect. For him, it's effect and cause. So in the case of some things that Donald Trump believes in, there's a large, and I'll go as far as suggesting there's a large majority of Canadians that would agree with him. One of them is immigration. This immigration thing that Trump is you know all about. Um, the problem is that a lot of people think they're not impacted by these decisions. They're finding out in the U.S. right now that the immigration issues a lot affects more people than people realize, because they vote on what they think Trump's going to do. And now we're going to find out how many people. But wait, I didn't think my son-in-law was going to be shipped out of the country. He was here when he was a year old, and now and that kind of thinking. I don't want to get into the United States. I want to stay in Canada. But you get my point that I'm making. There's a lot of Canadians who feel the same way. And the problem with being Canadian, and I'm guilty of it probably as much or more than anyone else, I seem to spend more time watching American politics than I do Canadian politics, because Canadian politics isn't as fired up. There's not as many flash bombs in Canadian politics. In fact, when there is, it's like this one here, where all we're talking about, when you really think about it, he was making a change in his cabinet. But this is resonating in many ways across the country, as you said, with our provincial leader, our premier, saying, I had no idea this was going to happen. And you got Poliver asking questions like, so what happened? Right. And he's going to try and spin it as to something that's going to be beneficial for him. This is the kind of political thing that doesn't go ahead.
I was going to say the only thing I can think of with regards to Pierre Poilievre asking what's going on is if he got the security clearances, he probably know. I'm just saying.
Oh, Aaron. Yeah, so that now it's time for people like you and me and other people in Canada to start paying attention to the politics of the day, not of 10 years ago, not of 20 years ago, the politics of the day, where we sit politically today. And as Canadians, the question is needs to be asked now, from now on. What does this mean to me? I am not here to say or promote anything other than, well, I might step in once in a while, obviously, because I have ideas. But what I want to start with is say it's time for all of you out there to pay attention to what's going on. And don't be conned by the con artists who tell you, well, it doesn't matter how you vote. Things are going to turn out the way they're going to turn out. It's all fixed and all that stuff. I beg Canadians to understand that democracy is about voting for someone that you think is going to do what you need, change what needs to be changed.
Now,
That's
speaking personally, I will never tell you who to vote for. I may judge you on who you vote for, but I'm never going to tell you who to vote for. What I do encourage all Canadians to do, because this is going to happen whether we want it to or not, learn the platforms. Don't believe the slogans. Don't buy into, the commercials that say X but actually mean Y. Don't listen to the dog whistles. Go to each of these parties that you're considering voting for and read their platforms. Know what they are going to do for you and what they're going to do for Canadians before you place your vote.
And I'll add this. Check out the voting record of your representatives. Never mind what they say. Watch what they've done. Look at their record. I just said don't look back. Well, to the extent of looking back too far, but you can look back to the politicians that you'll be voting for. Don't just listen to what they're saying. Look at their voting record. Look at what they vote for. Look what they propose. And really, I can't express enough. Look at how they vote. Because if there's one lesson I've learned from the U.S. Political thing that's out there, is that there are a lot of Republicans who are trying to take credit for the biggest thing that the Biden government did, and that is infrastructure. And the benefit that it's brought to states, the majority of states that were Republican. And now those Republicans are going around saying, see what we did? And people aren't looking to see how they voted. And that's the mistake that people make. I don't want you to assume anything. I don't want you to, and Aaron will tell you, he doesn't want you to believe him. And I don't want you to believe me. But my fellow Canadians, it's time for us to take notice and start taking stock in what our politicians are doing. Ignore what they're saying, to Aaron's point, because that's one thing, and everything we've discussed right now, that's the thing I agree with Aaron the most. Follow the voting pattern of the people in charge and who want to run, and find out why they're involved. And finally, if there's an opportunity to find out who's supporting each party, who's getting money, who's giving them the money, that's the first thing I want to see, because I can see in the U.S. how that has been a destructor of the political system. We need to know who's offering money to get these people elected.
For sure.
You get the last remark, my friend.
Well, like I said, folks, like we're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're just going to make sure that you go out there and make sure that you're informed as to what your local candidate is doing and as to what your national candidates are doing, because those are two very important things that are going to affect you. Even if you don't vote or you think your vote doesn't matter, you still live in Canada, and what happens here will affect you. So bear that in mind going forward. We'll look forward to seeing the writ drop in the next couple of weeks. It'll probably be a Christmas surprise.
Yes. So do yourself a favor, get educated, try to understand not what they're telling you, what they've done. What they've done, not what they're telling you. And for the people who criticize, listen to what they've done as well. Look for what they've done. It's easy to criticize. So anyway, thanks for doing this, Aaron. And we both agree there's an election in the offing. I can see the train coming down the tunnel. And wow, will it be a spring election? Probably.
We'll see. They've got 34 to 55 days to get it done. So
There you go.
we'll see what happens.
Timing is there.
Yep.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.